Today, we become legends.
Today's Titan Talk covered the AutoSpeed Drama, the Next Wandering Market, Odyssey, Smite II on Switch 2, and a bunch more. So without further ado, let's jump into today's Titan Talk recap. First up, there's been a few hotfixes since the last show, which I'll put on screen here. You can pause the video if you want to read them all, but some of the more important ones are Divine Ruin's bug, where it had no internal cooldown, was fixed. Arena has been re-enabled after the issues have been sorted with that. Souls 2 hitting more times than intended has been fixed, and Apollo's 3 now gives the proper Audacity stacks. They also mentioned that this weekend is Memorial Day weekend in America, so there will likely be minimal or no patches over the weekend, and there also won't be a Titan Talk on Monday because it's a day off. So the OB11 showcase will be on Wednesday next week instead of the usual Monday. Someone asked about worshipper boosters, and they said generally boosters are sort of on the back burner for them, but they did of course add the account boosters with this update, so you can get those if you want to boost your worshippers. They also mentioned that they might be able to get some double worshippers going on over this weekend in a previous show, but no word on if that's actually happening. Someone asked if the worshipper boosters are additive or multiplicative in Smite 2, and Kilgoon said he thinks they're additive, but he's not 100% sure. There was actually a question about the auto speed and split pushing drama that's been going on lately, and Kilgoon actually addressed it, which was kind of surprising. He basically said they do want there to be multiple ways to play and win a game, but it's definitely possible that the PvE playstyle is a bit too strong at the moment, but from their end, they don't see it as a massive game-wide issue, and when players of equal skill levels play against each other, it's nowhere near as prevalent, compared to, for example, an 8k SR auto speed playing against diamond players, where it just becomes impossible to deal with because a player that's far better than their enemies could just 1v1 anyone, or even 1v2 or 3 in a lot of cases, making their split push basically impossible to deal with. So it sounds like they view it as more of an issue in matchmaking, and the auto speed can even come up against those players in the first place, than it is an issue with the core game itself. But he did mention that it's definitely possible that split push strategies are a little too strong at the moment, which I do agree with. It's definitely way easier to split push in Smite 2 compared to Smite 1. Hey, just jumping in here to promote my Twitch. I don't do it enough, so I thought I would throw it into this video. I'm live right now as this video goes out. If you want to discuss anything that came up on today's Titan Talk or the game in general, or just watch me play. As I said, I'm live right now as this video goes out. The link for that will be down below. Someone asked about expanding the god interactions like Horus and Set's passive to other iconic duos like Mordred and King Arthur when he releases, and Kilgoon said maybe, but they don't want to go too far in that direction to where loads of gods are only picked together, and he feels like it's more interesting if that kind of interaction appears organically, like Sobek and Artemis working well, for example, as the plug sets up into the trap. They definitely will consider more unique god interactions going forward though, maybe on the scale of Set and Horus, but not something that would be so overbearing that it would lead to one god only being picked with another god. There was a question about the Next Wandering Market that is of course going to drop in OB11, and Kilgoon said they've been playtesting with them and the skins are basically done and they might be ready to show them off on Friday, since we will be waiting a little bit longer for OB11's showcase next week. Kilgoon did also spoil that Princess Barry will be getting her first skin as part of the Next Wandering Market, which is cool, and they also said that it will be a themed market, sort of like the previous one and not like the first one. Someone asked about the Pelle Aspect that appeared in the flash test, and Kilgoon said it probably wasn't supposed to be enabled, but yes, they are working on a Pelle Aspect, and it should be in either OB11 or OB12 depending on how much progress they can make on it. They also mentioned that they're looking at going back to Baron's Aspect at some point soon, but nothing concrete. There was a question of if things like Odyssey are being thought about at the moment, big event kind of things, and Kilgoon said not particularly at the moment, at least not on the scale of Smite 1's Odysseys, as with the current size of the team and all the other stuff they're working on, like gods, aspects, classic skin ports, all that stuff. They're probably looking more towards after the official release when the game is in a more stable state and doesn't need as much work doing to the core game before they start working on full-scale events like Odysseys. Someone asked about Smite 2 on the Switch 2, and Kilgoon said it sort of depends on Nintendo's policy around live service games on the Switch 2 in terms of when patches can be released and approved, as that can slow down how often they patch, which is sort of an issue with Smite 2 compared to Smite 1 that patch much less frequently. Even in Smite 1 it caused issues with patches being delayed, so in Smite 2 it will be a lot worse, as well as just if the Switch 2 is even capable of running Smite 2 stably or not, that's also an issue. Someone asked if it's better to release multiple gods in a big batch rather than one by one, and Kilgoon said generally they found that it's better to have a constant stream of new content coming in rather than dropping 3 or 4 gods and then having no new gods for a couple of months. There was a question of if we can expect more Pantheon specific backgrounds like the Egyptian one, and Isaiah said they are working on them in the background, but no ECA on when we might get the next one. Someone asked if Baba Yaga would be difficult to port, and Kilgoon said yes, she is probably one of the more challenging ones. She's multi-modeled with a state change and a lot of strange logic and rules like randomized target is on the 1, randomized potions on the 2, and storing potions in her consumable slot, all that kind of stuff. They also mentioned that they feel like Barber could have been more successful than she was, so she might get more major changes or +1s coming into Smite 2 when they eventually do get to her. There was another question about people missing their mains from Smite 1, and Kilgun basically said they're going as fast as they can with the resources that they have, and if you take away the Smite 1 comparison, Smite 2 already has a lot more playable characters than most games of its type, with the exception of decade-old games like, of course, Smite 1, League, and Dota. But they are putting a pretty heavy focus on getting a lot of God ports into the game, like with slowing down new God releases to make sure they can get everyone's favorite mains in, as they feel like that is something that a lot of people aren't playing the game. It's like one of the big reasons they aren't playing the game is because their main isn't there. Someone mentioned the stolen Smite art that was posted to the Reddit recently, and Kilgun said they have seen that and have passed it on to their legal team. They do find quite a lot of cases that come up like this, and they do have to defend their IP on a semi-regular basis from this kind of stuff. Someone asked for more HUD editor upgrades like saved presets or snap to grid, and Kilgun said they aren't working on anything for that right now, as they feel like other areas of the game would have a better return on investment in terms of QOL compared to improving HUD editor, such as the new Q screen that sounds like it will be coming fairly soon based on what they said on the show, which is exciting. Someone asked if Danza's ult could get the same treatment as Mordred's 4B, where you can rotate during the pre-fire, and Isaiah said he'll pass that along to the team, as it does sound like a good idea. There was a question of if they discussed any brand new game modes that weren't in Smite 1 for Smite 2, and Kilgun said they have discussed it, of course, but it's really hard to make a brand new game mode that people will actually care about long term, and it's a big upfront investment that might not pay off super well, and they don't feel like more game modes right now is really what the game needs compared to more gods or core gameplay features like God Builder. Someone asked if they might do more name colors at any point soon, and Kilgun said they have talked about adding a new pack of themed name colors at some point. No firm ETA, and they said they don't want to overdo it though by adding new name colors like every patch or anything like that. There was a question if pets could proc item effects in Smite 2 at any point soon, and Kilgun said that's actually an intentional design decision that they may revisit in the future, but for now they feel like the game is better without pets proccing items. It was something they tried in the later stages of Smite 1, and they felt like it actually led to a lot of unhealthy gameplay patterns. Someone asked about starter items, and Kilgun said they are looking into starters for some work at some point, but probably not in the next few patches as they're focused on other things right now. I asked about the trees overhaul that they were working on for Conquest, and they said they are still working on it, probably not in the next update, but maybe the one after. Someone asked about the UE 5.5 update, and Kilgun said probably sometime around OB 12 or 13 for that, and it should come with some performance improvements on our end for a lot of players, as well as giving the team more tools and functions to work more effectively in the future on their end, so it should improve like game development speed and efficiency. Someone asked about marketing the game more, and Kilgun said that people who are watching Titan Talk aren't the target audience for their ads, and they do their ads in a very targeted way, so you probably don't see them, but they are doing a little bit of advertising work for Smite 2 at the moment, and they will probably ramp it up more as they approach the full release of the game when the game is in a better state and has a better new player experience. Right now they feel like a big marketing push will be at least partially wasted with the state the game is in and how it wouldn't retain any new players super effectively. And finally, someone asked if they would add any kind of mod support for Smite 2, like for example the Smite Optimizer, and Kilgun said it's an interesting idea and they have had some talks with mod providers, and theoretically they could support some of those in the future if they feel like it would improve the experience. Well, that's everything discussed on today's Titan Talk. Don't forget to drop a like before you leave, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.